and I keep kind of getting drawn back to like this whole idea that, you know, when you're in the majority, you don't face the same pressure because, you know, you already have a greater social currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like I kind of, you know, when we talk about implicit bias and we talk about racism and we talk about all these things, we talk about it on societal levels. We talk about it, you know, comparing societies too, where to some extent you can see like, you know, different types of racism, like in Japan and China and the Philippines.
Right.
But when we talk about like personal understanding, and when we talk about like individual, I don't want to say transactions with social currency. That sounds gross.
But interactions.
But like, you know, interaction. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Because just because I was staring at social currency, I've been jotting down notes this entire time. So, but you know, when we have these interactions with people, it's like I keep getting drawn back to, and maybe it's just because, you know, I do have privilege. Like how do we get people to recognize their privilege without making it such like a big thing, because it ends up being something that's a lot more personal, and that you can't just say like, you know, as a blanket statement, oh, all white people have privilege, because there's going to be some white guy that's like, I've been working my entire life for like, I've been struggling through all of my stuff. And it's like that, just because you have privilege doesn't mean that you don't struggle.
Exactly.
But it's just that the chips aren't stacked against you in the same way, right?
Exactly.
And so
it's actually funny because I have like the perfect response, because I've come across that exact scenario several times.
Yeah.
Because a friend used that one against me, and my argument against it was, when you hear about, you know, like a poor white person that says like white privilege doesn't exist, I grew up in a working class farmer society, you know, where's my white privilege at? And my response was, the privilege comes from the mindset of you feeling like you shouldn't be poor, versus other ethnicities and other people had to just accept it and say, this is the journey that we're on.
Or that you got to grow up. Some people don't get to grow up.
Yeah.
Some people.
Yeah, true.
That's true.
But I think that it's very hard to disentangle these conversations about racism and stereotypes and bias and privilege and marginality from feeling personal, because they're truly personal.
They're 100% personal.
These are our everyday lived experiences. I think where it gets hard is where when you're not willing to listen, how you may, because we ascribe like people who are, in our world, in our society, we say people who are racist are bad. That's it. And that's not true.
It's not true.
What they are is they're not, I think I like to believe that people are not bad and people are not good. They are people. And some of us have been taught very harmful and very violent things. And how can we recognize that? And then how do we unlearn that? Do you see that someone else is worth everything, that they are worth their life, that they are worthy to have a home, they, you know, regardless, you know, of their skin color or whatever, or their social economic status. But because we equate being racist with being bad, and in our polite society, you can't be bad, we ought to be like, oh, no. I've never done this before in my life. And it's like, yeah, you probably have. That doesn't make you a bad person. What makes you bad is saying that I've never done it before in my life.
Yeah.
With saying it is like, you know, I think when I've had to do like work like social justice or like diversity or justice workshops or whatever you may call them, because I hate all terms about them. When I'm teaching people how to be people, I would have students or people in my workshop who are maybe white and male, or white women, or straight people, or whatever the privileged identity may be, who go through those stages of like where it's like denial. I've never done that in my life. Or like then the anger, like, how dare you say that I'm this, or I've done that, or I'm harmful or violent, or whatever it may be. And then the guilt. And to me, usually I can get through those other two stages. It's the guilt that I can't deal with, because I think, and I'm sure Darius has heard me say this, guilt is a useless emotion. It does not it does not propel you forward.
Yeah.
It does not propel you back. It keeps you stuck.
100%.
What are you going to do to you got to use this guilt for something
like
else.
make
You
it
got to move
actionable.
past it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think how we have people recognize this is that, one, you have to be, in all of my workshops, we start off by doing like a community norms. So we have to say, these are our norms of how we're going to interact with the people in this space. And we come up with the list together. Do we agree with that? Okay. And if you don't agree with it, let's talk about that and let's see how we can all come to one accord. And that is a team building activity. That is about rapport building. Because if I can't talk to you, if I don't know you, if I don't know how to interact with you, if I don't know where you're coming from, and that's a lot of it, is we don't know people. We don't know people beyond our own families or our own small friend groups. And we're not willing to get to know other people that are completely different from us, and to listen. Not ask them questions. You don't have to always come with a list of questions about how can I help you? No, listen. If you listen to people long enough, you'll realize where you can step in.
Yeah. And I'm glad you threw that in there too, because there's definitely a balance between helping others unlearn their bad tendencies or beliefs, but then also there's an aspect of it where it has to be taken upon themselves.
Definitely.
I think you have to just get past needing to be right.
Exactly. Absolutely.
That just doesn't serve anybody, right? Because if you need to be right, and I need to be
wrong.
Right, everybody's wrong.
But people get afraid
of that.
I thought stuff
when I was 5. I thought stuff that was wrong when I was 5. I thought 2 + 2 was 5. I was wrong.
But we
need to learn to grow past it.
We're so afraid of being wrong. We always want to be right.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you realize that we are wrong most of our lives, and you realize, well, I'm okay to make a mistake, and I'm okay with somebody correcting me. Because I would hope, I would hope that you're doing it because you see me as a person worthy of growth. So please correct me.
I wonder how much of it is because I have a background in economics, and I like behavioral economics as kind of my foray into behavioral psychology. And I think about sunk cost fallacy. And I think about how much people have invested in this idea, this identity of who they are. And again, this goes back to the cognitive bias, but it's how much weight, how much time they've put into developing, this is who I am. And the things that I think need to be right and be in alignment with that, where it's maybe they're afraid of all of that crumbling down.
Oh yeah.
And all of that crashing down around them, because it's hey, how do I view the world now? But fighting for what they believe is right in their arguments without recognizing being right in itself just doesn't serve anything, doesn't really have a purpose.
See, the way I look at it in terms of human evolution, it's all about adaptability. Because even evolution, it has mistakes. And through time, understanding those mistakes is how we get better. And you look back all the way to the Darwin days with the birds with the different beaks. The bird had to actually try to do something with his beak to realize that it was inefficient, do it enough to a point where they naturally would have to evolve into something better to fit that situation. And in this particular case, the situation is awareness and understanding of, diverse individuals around you. And so it's how much actions and adaptability are we willing to embrace so we can evolve into those better people, the more inclusive individuals that recognize, the different walks of life that's on this planet.
And I think that ultimately kind of what I think that kind of gets back to is how do you get past people's guilt? Because I think, Mickey, you're right. The guilt is really,
it's useless.
That's the stopping point. But that's the stopping point where it's people recognize what they've done and where they've been, but in order to actually get through to people, hey, you have a chance to build, it's like the bird is going down the wrong way and is starving its entire life, but instead of realizing hey, I'm not doing well with this analogy, but
I think if I can help, you have to help people to realize that there is there is freedom on the other side. Like, there is a way that we can interact with one another that is in love on the other side. If you can get past this guilt, if you're willing to put the work in and to be in, you know, in community and solidarity with people and working towards, I would hope, one, we have to come to a collective understanding of like, what do we want out of this life? Do we want a place, a world in which everyone has what they need in order to not survive, but to thrive? If we want that and we're working towards the same goal, let's talk about how do we get there. So there's no point in us sitting here like, oh man, I can't believe that like some of the words that I used to use, like Facebook memories for me is a constant reminder of how like shitty I was as a human being.
Yeah.
Like in high school.
100%.
And I love what I love about that is like, look at that growth, girl. Look at that growth.
Yep, same.
Because I could say like, oh man, like I used to be such a terrible person. I used to use such, you know, bad or harmful or violent words, or I used to do this or think that, and I'm such a bad person. I could say, I want to not be a bad person anymore, or I don't want to do those bad things. Like, how, you know, I don't want to do those. I can consciously make the decision to not do that anymore. And I think that we have to be, there's a bravery in being vulnerable. That I don't think that as a collective we reached just yet.
No,
but
not at all.
I think it can start though with community building, trying to really be in community with other people. And that goes beyond just sitting and having conversations. I think about like, you know, if someone's in need, like when you brought up the example of like the ally selling their house, to me, a better thing would have been like, I have a spare bedroom. Is there someone that I can give, like, I can give you this bedroom at no cost. Like, I'm not even going to charge you for it. Here's a bedroom for you. These are the things that I'm thinking about. Like, how are we meeting the needs of one another? Especially, you know, if we think about underneath our current government systems and not just like the political system that we are currently in, or presidential system or presidential whatever. I'm thinking of like underneath like this late stage capitalistic society, how are we the people meeting one another's needs, knowing that our government, as we can see for the past, you know, almost 2 years, left us for dead. How are we meeting each other's needs? How do you know what the other person's needs are if you're not in community with them?
Just got off the clock, just got on my chill. Called on my homie Brent to see what be the deal. What you trying to do? I'm just trying to heal. Hella floated, never bloated's what I'm trying to feel. Hop in the whip and